Good morning. I'd like to call the May 4th, 2021 bid board meeting to order. We have acknowledgement of a quorum. The first item on the agenda is to announce a new member of the bid. Every year, the mayor can appoint a different delegate from our alderman constituency, and so Justice has decided to move on to some other projects within the city, and we have Mark Allen, who's actually the alderman for the downtown area, who will be working with us for at least the next year, hopefully longer. Welcome.
Thank you.
And looking forward to working with you. So now the real next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 6th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Financial report, Jess.
I'll pull it up here. We really had very little activity in terms of financial expenses and revenues in this past month. It's going to begin kicking up now that we have landscaping rolling. We technically have about just under the $15,000 that's encumbered based on our last meeting approving the Scott's Landscaping Services and our partnership with Roots and Branches. So that's moving ahead. And then also we had approved some design costs for Steiner Electric that I'll add in here as well. But otherwise, the $8,400 continues to stay there for lights and decorations. I'll have an update on the Christmas decorations shortly, but we will be working to receive a bill from David J. Frank for the removal of the winter decorations, which is what that's in there for. Otherwise, the only expenses were electricity costs for the lights and the music, and that's it.
We have any, need a motion and a second.
I'll move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is Rob Steiner coming today?
So Rob messaged me early this morning and had sort of a medical issue pop up and wasn't able to attend today. So I'm happy to talk through this a bit. He did provide us with the estimate that we requested in the last meeting. So what was requested of Rob was to come back with an estimate on fixing what's currently out now on the buildings. So he said in his email today, it's approximately 1/6 of the lights compared to the next estimate, which is to replace all of the incandescent bulbs. So the first one that he sent over, this new one, is $9,500, and it would be fixing only what's out now. And he said that the reason the cost is not 1/6 of the cost of the other one is mainly because of the labor cost didn't necessarily, go down at the same rate as the bulbs do. It still takes approximately the same amount of labor of going up and down the street and everything to accomplish this task. So we have two estimates here. The first one, $95.57 for updating what's currently out. He also mentioned the lifespan of the lights, and that these are probably the ones that went out a little bit early, but we can expect that, over the next, however many years or hours, additional ones will go out. The second estimate is the one that we saw last time. That is to replace all of the incandescent bulbs to kind of get us up and going for a longer period of time until we can land on our major change of the LED installation if we so choose.
Okay, so unfortunately, the person who wanted that second estimate wasn't able to be here today, which is Tony. Anybody want a further discussion from the last meeting as to what we should be doing? Either do the partial or the full?
I still like the idea of fixing what we have so that the downtown is lit up, and then look at doing some sort of fundraising, something to get the community involved in understanding why we want to go to the more expensive lights, why they'll last longer, but making them be a part of the change. But I think it looks terrible with just having half the lights lit up. It's just my opinion.
I agree with Peggy on that. I think it would be nice to know what other hardware we'd have to replace, because it's not included in the estimate as far as transformers and some of the sockets. So it could. I think these are the lowest estimates right here. I'd be in favor of doing the first one if we could get a handle on what's going to cost to actually get those sections that aren't running again, because that's pretty important.
So I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying. I personally think, the lights look really good, and if I knew that there would be this golden parachute that would drop out in a year or two and we'd get $250,000 to do the lights, I would say not do any of it. But I personally don't see this, that happening for at least 3 years. I think the ideal goal would be to have this ready when Main Street gets redone. And I look at what I do in my own business. When I replace lamps, I do a full replacement, because otherwise you're just chasing one after the other. So, but it does scare me that we got sections that are totally out and we have no idea why they're out. So to Larry's point, there may be a lot of stuff that's not in here that's still going to have to be fixed, and we're not going to get 100%. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn between what to do, but I would lean towards doing the whole thing if we're going to do it. We're up there. They're working on it. Let's just do it and get it done. And we know that it'll probably last like 3 to 4 years, which is hopefully our cycle to get this totally replaced. I don't like spending the money, but
Mike, when you say the whole thing, the 19
the
or 20,
19,000 one.
yeah, a case could be made that if it's going to take 10 grand to replace 1,200 and 20 grand to replace 6,500, you would say, I place my bet on the 19 and just take care of it.
How long did the lights last? When was the
Did this
last time that
4
we went
years.
through and replaced everything?
We replaced everything 4 years ago.
So that works out to about $5,000 a year, give or take.
Well, when we did it last time, it was, I think, $8,000 to do this project, and now was it more?
I believe it was 17, just a
Oh,
little
okay,
bit
so it
over.
didn't go up that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd probably be in favor of doing the whole thing just based on the technology in place and how long it's likely to last.
Well, someone make a motion. No, someone needs to make the motion.
Oh, I'd like to,
That we do the total replacement.
Turn your mic
I
on.
move that we
Second.
do a total replacement, but shouldn't we have a cap on anything else, or are we going to give them carte blanche on the hardware replacement?
And don't you have to bid it out?
No,
No.
it's under the cap. So
Okay.
we don't have
Okay.
to.
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so discussion on your side. I agree, I think we should put a cap and say it's this, and if there's more, if there's a section that's totally out, we need to be brought up to speed on what that is, what that's gonna cost, and then we can make a decision if we're gonna do that section or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. So,
So you'd have to
you want me
amend
to
your
add that to the
motion.
motion?
I need you to amend your motion.
I would amend it to anything above and beyond what's in the bid here, be revisited by the bid board and voted on as far as up to what 5,000 or?
Typically, on city contracts, I believe it depends, it's 5 to 10% change. I would say if the total of the change would be under 10%, that would be probably reasonable to go ahead and proceed rather than delay the work. Because delaying the work, means that they gotta rent equipment again. As I understand it, part of this is renting one of these mobile lift devices, so I think awarding the contract with up to a 10% variance is probably a reasonable approach. Beyond that, it makes sense to get the board back together.
I'm fine with that, if you want to word it that way. That's 10%? Is that what we want to?
I think 10% is a reasonable variance.
Can I just share the numbers from last time? The dates and times are close, but clicking through the emails, it was 2016 when you replaced all the out bulbs.
5 years.
So almost 5 years ago. And then in 2017, Rob and his team found some out sections, right? And so a year later, they came through and replaced the sections that were out. I think that's what you're talking about now, the pieces that are actually in need of new infrastructure, not just a bulb. And whatever number you set on that over and above the estimate from Steiner, I think is what you're discussing right now. It was, I can't find that exact number, but I think it was a couple of grand. So it was $3,500 to replace the bulbs, $2,000 to do the as-built in 2016, and I want to say it was like $1,500 for the section that was out, sections replacing the hardware that was out last time. So if you put a number of like $5,000 that he's got the ability to spend up to $5,000, I'm just throwing that number, I don't care what number you select, and anything over and above that, if it's significant, that they'd have to come back to the bid board. But I agree with the comments that have been made, that if Steiner Electric is out there and repairing it at the time and they have the equipment and the parts and the lift is rented, just let them roll, because it did take an entire year for them to get it back in the schedule and rent the lift again and go back and replace the hardware, if you will, that was out or not lit. And this doesn't take into account putting lights on buildings that are not currently lit. This would just be relighting the buildings that are lit. And for whatever reasons, politically or otherwise, over the tenure of this lighting in downtown, there are some buildings that have either chosen to not be lit or just were never discussed to be lit in the past. I think fast forward to the 3 years, like Mike's talking about, when the Main Street and all the amenities are being reconstructed in 2023, that's when you have the conversation about relighting or lighting for the first time those buildings that have never been lit. And maybe some really exciting conversations about lighting the backs of the buildings near the Riverwalk, and some additional thoughts that shouldn't be on your discussion level today. I'm sorry I can't find that number, but I know it was a small amount in addition to the original 2016. I found it last time you guys were meeting in the library, so I just wanted to jump up and share that with you. Thanks.
Well, I think if we just do like you said, do a 10% over, or if you want to do more, you can do that, but
Do we have the ability to just have a telephonic meeting if we need a decision while they're on site? Can we marshal a quorum over a teleconference, or?
we can, we just have to have a 24-hour notice.
Right. But that would, if they find something early, we might be able to address it while they're still working.
So why don't we?
I think if you make it 20% on top of what the bid is right now, that would be $4,000 roughly. I think that should cover most of what we're talking about. So I'd like to amend it to 20% overage.
Would you accept a friendly amendment to let Mike or somebody on the board be the point of contact for any time they, in other words, rather than just tell the contractor they've got this much to spend, let the changes go to somebody.
Sure. Mike's fine with me, if you want to be the contact person.
If you want me to be, I'll be.
Sure.
It's not a problem.
If
I'm
you
down
wanna-
there.
If you want to hand it off, I've got the construction background, know the questions.
Go
asked.
ahead.
All right, volunteer.
Be happy to let you do it. We can do it collectively. How's that?
It makes sense to have somebody control the
Okay, so
changes
let's-
rather than just let
let's,
them happen.
I think we need to kill that first motion and then let's start over. So,
I move that we accept the proposal to replace all the lights with up to a 20% overage, and anything that's not specifically spelled out in this bid, Mike could be a contact person, or,
A person to
Ken.
be designated.
so let's designate Ken.
I guess I found the number, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was in December of 2016 that Rob submitted a proposal to the bid to fix, furnish and install building track lighting that was broken parts from their 2016 replacement of the bulbs, and it was $3,600, $3,590. In 2016, you agreed to spend on the fixing, and it took them a whole year to get that fixed. So they fixed it in November of 2017 is when they did it. And that's when they did the mapping, the as-built for you for an additional $2,000. So you authorized that $3,600 and the $2,000. The mapping's done, so that's not an issue. So that would be in that window if there's the same amount of fixing that needs to take place in 2021. Hopefully it's not more than that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, I'd like to move down and do that kind of in combination with item 6, if you're okay with that, Jess?
Sure.
And move on to item 4, which is the bid survey update.
Sure. So I have been working on coordinating with two different survey, I guess, vendors. One of them is Paul Robach. We had talked about him at our last meeting. He is still interested. He was unable to attend today's meeting, but is happy to provide his services. He works for the UW system, and we have worked with him in the past on various strategic planning projects and others, and he did a great job. He would be willing to assist us in this for no charge. And then I've also been speaking with Polco. This is the company that the city of West Bend worked with on our community survey that was done this past winter. It's the National Community Survey. So we do have an existing dashboard with them and some options to do some additional surveys. They are working up an estimate on what their services would be and how much they would cost to help us craft these questions. I do have a draft of the questions started, but not yet ready for kind of a final review. So that's the update at this point, just working to get some estimates. I've been talking with Mike a little bit about it, and we'll plan to continue.
So I think until we have some better numbers. One of the reasons I asked Just, we have been talking about it, and I'd asked her to reach out to Polgo was, this is what they do. There was some question on whether or not Paul really had the background and the experience to be able to do a full-blown, more than what I would call a survey monkey survey, to get us some really good hard data and some really good results. So I think it makes sense to wait until we get some better information from the company the city has used in the past and just kind of kick this down the road to the next meeting. Anybody has any other thoughts on that?
As I understand it, the survey is two pieces, one for landlords and one for tenants? Is that still the,
Yep, so most likely the survey would have some type of qualifying question at the beginning. You could say you're a business owner, you're a property owner, you're both, or you're none, which would help us distinguish the, respondents' information. And because I think it would be interesting to know if there's a major disconnect or if their responses are similar, but it would be a broad survey to the bid, asking about various topics that where we currently spend money, future projects that have been discussed, and sort of gaining their feedback to make sure that it aligns with yours.
this is just a recommendation, but I would not force somebody who is a property owner and a business owner to fill out one survey, because the right answers as the property owner might not be the answers that make sense for the business owner. And so they shouldn't be required to choose one or the other. They should actually get to answer two surveys.
Sure, they would be able to answer that they are both.
No, you're saying they'd
Oh.
get a survey and they'd say, I'm both. But I know when I'm filling out surveys, the survey answers that apply to me might not be the survey answers that apply to the business.
Sure.
Okay. They're both valid points of view, and so I would suggest that when, if you're doing a two-pronged approach, that rather than say, oh, well, you're both, so you get to answer this one survey, they should actually get to answer two surveys.
Sounds good. And I think we'll definitely defer to whoever we hire to help us with those questions. That was just a recommendation from POCO so far. So I'll bring that up in our conversations and, of course, defer to them as well on their best practices, because that's great. But thank you.
Sure.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, we'll move to holiday decorations update. You want me to do that, or do you want to do it?
You can do that. It's great.
So we had a meeting with David J. Frank last week to talk about Phase 3, which is primarily focused on things over the roadway. He's going to go back. One of the things that I challenged him with was to get me some really hard, good pictures so that we don't end up like we did last time, where we thought we were going to get these giant things across the road and they turned out to be little tiny balls because none of us had the perspective. So he's working with a vendor who potentially could do custom for us. I've also talked to the people from the group that I've been working with from a donation standpoint, and they're on board to look at Phase 3 and work on potential funding for that as well. So there's just a bunch of little things happening. They're also going to, as you know, there were issues with the tree last year staying lit. There is something electrical with it. There's no question about it, because whenever it rained is when the GFIs would pop, and Doug and his crew did a great job of making sure they had new GFIs, so I could continually look at David J. Frank and say, it's not our problem, it's yours. So they're going to pick up the tree at some point and totally rewire it to eliminate the issues that we had. So at least they're following through with that and taking care of that and making sure that it, we don't have the issues going forward. So I guess stay tuned for more updates as we get down the road a little farther. And once I have some proposals from David J. Frank, then I will take them to the past funders and see if we can generate the cash to do it, and try to work out how to make it all happen. So that's all we really have at this point. If anybody has ideas of what they really think we should be doing, by all means come forward and let us know, because we'd like to have input. Also, if anybody out there knows anyone who wants to donate, have them contact me and I'll get them tuned into what we're doing and what we need. And, we're always looking for more donors. So if there aren't any other questions, if anybody has any questions about them. Well, good. Okay, let's go back to 3 and kind of tied in with 6. There was an email that was sent to Kathy about this. I saw the email last night for the first time. I also went to Jess about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, I have an issue with a particular restaurant downtown that is getting garbage pickup from the city because they're not taking care of their own garbage, which I didn't feel was a fair thing for the other businesses downtown, the other restaurants downtown. Why we as a city were supplying garbage pickup for this restaurant when all the other businesses down there had to pay for their own garbage pickup. So I'm not sure where we're at with that, but my suggestion is if they needed more garbage cans, they needed to purchase some more cans that matched ours instead of having the green rolly dumpsters sitting out on the street. I know Doug is here, so he can kind of address that. But I also think that if they buy the garbage cans, it's still their responsibility to be emptying those cans on a daily basis and moving that into their dumpster so that the downtown stays clean. And then that ties into the email that was sent requesting that the bid or the city, and I'm not sure, I thought about this overnight of how this is even realistic, of hiring somebody to go and sweep the curb line and the gutters and all of that on a weekly basis to keep downtown cleaned up. Part of me is like, okay, that's the front of your business and you should be doing that yourself. But we're also coming full circle back to 5-6 years ago when the city had a cleanup crew that they were paying to clean up downtown, to maintain downtown, and that got taken out of the budget. And I believe Herb said, well, we'll see what happens and see how long downtown stays clean. So we're right back to that full circle of, whose responsibility is it to clean up Main Street and keep it clean? So that's a whole bunch of things in one. I don't know, Doug, if you want to address the garbage can situation first, and then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. Good morning. The garbage can issue, I'll take all the heat for it. When COVID started, we wanted to be a business-friendly community, and with the restrictions of occupancy in the businesses, there was a lot of carry-out. That garbage can in particular was not the only one that received garbage from other businesses downtown. It was all over. Restaurants had carry-outs. They'd sit outside. Unfortunately, the type of carry-outs there are the pizza boxes. So they fill up the garbage can very quick. They don't fit. It looks terrible. So to address the issue, I did ask our staff to put down some extra garbage cans in that area, because Simply said we don't have enough staff to go down there every morning and pick garbage downtown. So it was a way to make the area look cleaner and address the extra garbage issue. They have since been removed since the restrictions were lifted. So I believe the concern with the city providing that extra garbage has been addressed.
Well, and I guess I forgot to mention that in there, and thank you for I understand why it was done. It was just when it was continuing into this year is when I had the concern with it. So, thanks for working with the businesses and helping, keep all of us viable through that whole mess last year. We do appreciate it, but I do see this potentially as a continual issue as well. So, because of the situation with the size of their packaging, I totally get it. So,
Yeah, honestly, it's nothing new with the garbage can. It fills up very quickly.
Right.
In one dinner hour, and it's full. So it's been an issue for.
And I'm not asking that the city go and clean it up. I'm saying it should be the restaurant's responsibility, just as when we kind of put pressure on the bars to clean up the cigarette butts in front of their restaurant, in front of their bars. I think this is kind of that same situation. you know, so, and that's why I asked to put this on the agenda so we could talk about it.
Sure, and I can work with Jess too, and we can have some conversations and try to come up with some other options for the business owner.
I was asked to just check into cleaning along the gutters. I think most of the businesses and owners do a fairly good job with the sidewalks, but you get cigarette butts and a lot of stuff that just blows right into the gutters, especially, what would that be, on the west side of the street. Are there provisions to clean that? Does that happen on a regular basis?
We try to do it at least a couple times throughout the summer. It's a little unique situation because our staff comes in. We have 2 employees that come in at 2 a.m. and with backpack leaf blowers, so they go along the curbs and blow it all out, so the street sweeper can come by and grab it, because obviously the street sweeper can't get in all them corners in the downtown parking areas. So the 2 employees usually start at 2 a.m. and then by 3 a.m. we have the street sweeper coming back and forth cleaning the area up, because we can't do it when there's all parked cars down there. This has been scheduled the 3rd time now it's been scheduled. Unfortunately, we can't keep our street sweeper operating more than 2 days. And I don't want to schedule our staff to come in at 2 a.m. and our street sweeper break down, and then I have them, working with no equipment. The most recent schedule was this Thursday morning, and now that got changed again to Friday because they're calling for rain on Thursday. So it is scheduled for this Friday to come through and clean the downtown.
So that would be done like twice during the summer, or once a month, or?
We try to do it once a month, but
Okay.
Our availability.
I get it.
We're limited on our
Sure.
staffing, so.
Yeah, okay.
But we tried it 3 or 4 times during the summer.
Thanks.
Do you post the streets? I know that I've driven through downtown at O'Dark 100 and there's still cars parked on the street. I don't know if they're residents of the downtown area. Do you generally have the streets completely empty? In other words, do you post it as no parking, or?
Well, it is posted 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., no parking. That's to help with snow plowing.
Uh-huh.
But if there's a car here or there, for street sweeping, we can work around it. But when you go down there during the day and it's full of cars, it's not safe either,
Right.
with all the debris and pedestrians walking around. So generally a car here and there doesn't affect it for street sweeping. Snow plowing is a different story.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Doug? Actually, we'll just keep you up there and if you want to announce the 17th, and then we can get on to 7, which is going to be the bike rack that we'll need Doug for as well.
Sure. I mean, really, this is kind of a reminder. I think we spoke about it last time, but the downtown cleanup day is Monday, May 17th. So we'll meet down at Old Settlers Park at 8 a.m. and get going with cleanup and planting. And, we'll also have the flowers available to the businesses who did order them. So thanks to everybody who did that. And let me know if you have any questions.
Are we sending out postcards like we did in the past to remind people that they want to volunteer, they can?
We can. I wasn't planning to send a postcard. We've been sending emails. I've also been attending like the specialty shops meetings and other meetings and trying to spread the word. But if that's something you'd like to.
Not necessarily. I mean, if we have a good email list, I think the email is probably more effective than the mail, because quite frankly, if you mail it today, you probably won't get it until the 25th of May.
Yep. We've had a really good response lately on the emails. A lot of people have mentioned that they're getting the recaps and that they're on it. And as many times as I can find emails, I'm adding people to the list. So if you aren't receiving it for some reason, which I'm sure you all are, or someone, I'm happy to add them. And it's a pretty significant list at this point.
Okay, that's good. Then let's just stay with that, because the mail's not the most consistent anyway. So, okay, numbers. If there's no other questions on that, we can move on to 7. Thanks for the city actually for putting that together and helping with that. That's greatly appreciated. Number 7, the bike rack install. Some of you will remember a number of years ago, there was a discussion about putting a bike rack at the corner of Chestnut and Main at the Recycle Art location. That has come back, and it was denied at that point because for whatever reason, the city said, hey, we have to have a grant of privilege, and there was just a lot of red tape, and it didn't make sense to me at that point because it's a city bike rack and it was going on city property, why the business was going to have to go through all these hoops. So it's come back full circle. We still have 2 bike racks that are in storage. And there's been a request to try to get one put back in again. And because I kind of know the numbers, but I may be getting them confused, I'm going to let Doug or Jess talk about the cost of doing this. And then we have to make a decision what we want to do as a bid board of approving it or not approving it.
So just some background, this topic came up a couple weeks ago as a request for the bike racks, 2 bike racks to be installed, one on Main Street and one on Chestnut. A lot of the participants at Art Cycle cannot drive, and so bicycle and riding bike and walking is kind of the primary mode of transportation, so it would be greatly helpful for them to have some bike racks. I worked with Doug and our city engineer to look at the space and see if anything is possible, and they're currently going to be doing some measuring and making sure that utilities aren't underneath, but we're moving ahead. Doug provided sort of a ballpark estimate of what the cost for installation would be, which is what we'll likely be asking about today, is if we can cover that cost of the concrete pad to install them. But I don't know, Doug, if you want to add anything about that.
Just right now, the status is I put 2 stakes in the 2 locations that Jess and I had talked about, just to call on a digger's hotline, locate to find out what utilities are underneath there to see if there's any conflict. And that ticket isn't clear until tomorrow, I believe. So I think it was last Thursday or Friday when I staked it out. So it all depends if we want to put 2 in or 1. Both options will be available. It's digging down, excavating the topsoil, putting in a layer of base and a concrete pad, installing the bike rack on top of it. So I don't remember, what was the number I gave you? Like,
It was between $750 and $1,000.
yeah,
So roughly $500 max a piece.
yeah. She just asked me for estimate, and that's
Yeah.
off the cuff what I could give her. So
Is it 2 locations or 2 racks in 1 location?
It's 2 locations
Okay.
and 2 racks.
But
They
they're all
were-
within about, I mean, one's on Main and one's on Chestnut, right? If I understand it
Right.
right? It's
Yep.
on the corner.
Same
So they're
corner?
separated out. So it's not like they're 100 feet apart from each other. They're kind of by their front door.
Yep.
Doug, that estimate was for both of them?
correct.
Okay, thanks.
Was the grant of privilege still a requirement? If it seems like these are city assets, at least once they're installed.
They are city assets even before they're installed. So that was my discussion last time of why a grant of privilege was required, because we were going to do it as the bid. So
Right.
I guess,
So the grant, Max handles the grant of privilege. Really, the grant of privilege covers privately owned structure in the right-of-way. So if the utility company come in or city did a road project, the city's not financially responsible to replace a structure or a storm pipe or anything like that that's in the city's right-of-way. That's where grant of privileges come in. So I haven't had that conversation with Max. I don't know if Jess has.
Yeah, I think you'll find it's not a requirement because of the way the grant of privilege is written up. It should only apply to private assets in a public right-of-way. So-
Max was supportive of the locations as long as there wasn't any utility infrastructure underneath that would cause further issue. But this otherwise was fine with.
And I think maybe that's where the confusion came in before of who's going to own this or be responsible for it.
Right.
Yeah, and I also met with Gretchen. We were doing our Business of the Month filming next door at Bits and Pieces, and I bumped into her, and she showed me where they had talked about doing it before, and it was actually on the private property along where the business is. So they wanted to put the bike rack kind of right on the corner next to their building, which would have been a kind of a different situation. So, this is a good option.
So the question is, do we do one or two? When we originally discussed this, the plan was to put one bike rack down there. The two came because we have two bike racks, so we don't have to necessarily put two down there. That would just be a decision of if we want to put two of them down there, one or none,
Two.
basically.
Mike, do we have another location where it makes sense to put a bike rack?
Not right now, but once the Riverwalk is done, there probably could be.
Yeah, but it's possible that additional bike racks can be, included in the Riverwalk work or in the Main Street. There's a
Yeah, no,
certain.
yeah, exactly.
So I think if we don't currently have a place for one, let's put both of them in.
Okay, somebody needs to do a motion to that effect.
Motion to install two bike racks at the corner of Chestnut and Main.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? The only thing I'd like to add is it's up to that $1,000, right? I mean, that's what we're making the motion of. The cap is no more than $1,000 for the install.
I'd accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Doug, for everything.
Mike, is there a way that maybe we could get an additional proposal from Scott's Landscaping just to see how much more they would charge? Because they're down there every week during the summer. If they would just maybe blow out the gutter areas so that especially like during the week when it's busy with people, that on like farmer market days, that the city doesn't look so dirty. Is there any way we could just ask for a proposal on what that would cost?
So we can, since we're talking about agenda items, we could put that on an agenda item.
Okay, thank you.
Any other agenda items for the next meeting? Okay, and then just one other real quick announcement. Jay and the city staff and everybody did a phenomenal job of getting the brewery project to come through. And what that means to us is through some real battles on their part, which was kind of interesting to be a part of, they were able to get the TIF through, which includes monies to start looking at redoing Main Street, which is amazing. And so the Transportation Committee is going to have to really start kicking it into gear and getting active. So we will be contacting the people on that committee to start having some meetings because we're going to start talking about the design and our ideas so that we can have our input go into what's going to happen down there next year when they really start the designing. So those of you involved in that, Jess will be reaching out to get that to happen, and we'll start having some meetings, and we'll be reporting back to the full board as we proceed with that. So with that, if there's no other agenda items, I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everybody.